Hey there! Did you know Kroger always gives you savings and rewards on top of our lower-than-low prices? And when you download the Kroger app, you'll enjoy over $500 in savings every week with digital coupons. And don't forget fuel points to help you save up to $1 per gallon at the pump. Want to save even more? With a Boost membership, you'll get double fuel points and free delivery. So shop and save big at Kroger today. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Savings may vary by state. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
You can claim victory in sports, on the job site, even on your taxes by switching to H&R Block. Block offers many ways to file to fit your schedule. A 100% accurate return and your max refund or your money back. Plus, you'll always know the price of your tax prep before you begin. Switch today and feel like a tax champion. This tax season, it's better with Block. Make an appointment at hnrblock.com. All tax situations are different. Not everyone gets a refund. Limitations apply. Description of benefits and details at hnrblock.com/guarantees.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of the Skating Penguin Network's Mailbag. I am here, Garrett Bahana, along with Snail and Robbie Noggle. We are here to answer more of your questions. And, we had an extra large mailbag when we recorded on Tuesday. As we record this in the evening of January the 18th, we have another extra large mailbag to get through. So let's not waste any time here. Robbie, let's get question number one going. Question number one comes from Brian. If you could add any one player from the Mighty Ducks franchise to the Penguins, who would you pick? Brian says he's going with Dean Portman. He would add that sandpaper and physicality that's been missing for years. Full stop. I don't think I've seen the Mighty Ducks films. I know I haven't seen them from start to finish. I don't think I've seen a Mighty Ducks film since I was like 6 years old. So this question is not for me, but I'm assuming you two have seen it.
I'll never forget when I found that out because I think it was Brian brought up the Bash Brothers in a mailbag.
Yeah.
And you said something outrageous as to what you thought the Bash Brothers were, and I've been disappointed ever since.
So I'm going with the speed and skill here. I know it's probably a cliche, but I'm going with Charlie Conway. I mean, the Penguins need we're going to pretend that he's a young prospect. They need a young guy in the system. They need scoring. They need top six help. And while, Dean Portman definitely adds a lot of that sandpaper. Goldberg in goal. I mean, a lot of talent on those Mighty Ducks teams. But I'm going with the tried and true Charlie Conway. I mean, the dude is a franchise cornerstone waiting to happen. He is a fictionalized Connor Bedard, obviously. And having grown up on the Mighty Ducks, I actually have a Mighty Ducks hat with the old colors, like the colors, the Paul Kariya colors. I'll have to break it out one time for a recording, maybe, if I can get up in my attic when it's not like 10 degrees and I'm not like turning into an ice block up there. But going with Charlie Conway, put him on in that top six, instant scoring, speed. He's going to get the job done for you. So I'm a Charlie Conway fan there, and that's where I'd go, putting him on the Penguins roster. Question number two, jumping over to Snail, and this one is also from Brian. We do have a little mix tonight, but this one here is also Brian. Snail, you're a gear guy, and Brian asks, do players pay for their gear? I'd imagine most of them have sponsorships that pay for their sticks at the very least.
Yeah, so some players, like the higher profile players, are like legitimately sponsored by companies. Like Erik Karlsson, if you notice, which this is subject to change sometimes. Like I know players sometimes will, like Gino has no allegiances, but like Karlsson is Warrior head to toe. He's like sponsored by Warrior, despite maybe the contracts or deals that whatever team he or anyone else might be playing for. Sometimes like an outfitter, like a Warrior, a CCM will sponsor a team. I know that that's more popular in like the lower ranks. Like I'm trying to remember what league it was. I want to say it was like the AHL. I think was sponsored wholly by one outfitter at one point. Like it was like Warrior was like every AHL team got like Warrior sticks and gloves or something like that. So yeah, it's like these, probably lucrative contracts for these companies and outfitters to just supply gear to these teams. And like, if I don't know if you guys pay attention to gear too much, but like you'll notice like some teams have more like some teams will have more like CCM, for example. Like their whole bench is like everyone's kind of got CCM gloves except maybe a couple guys. A lot more CCM sticks out there. It's probably just contracts that they have worked out. So yeah, I always keep my eye out for the guys that are we talked about Rust at the beginning of the season. Like I think Rust must have had a contract with True, because until he ditched it eventually, but it looked like Rust was getting true gloves, true sticks. Always keeping an eye out for that kind of stuff. I think it's super interesting. But yeah, essentially it's these big companies just get a contract for a team. Question number 3 here, going over to Garrett from Brian. He asks, if Blomqvist becomes the guy when the Jari contract is near its end, what do you think happens to Sergei Murashov? Do you think they'll trade him for a team? Do you think they'll trade him for team needs or utilize him as a Ullmark Swayman tandem?
I like this question because we're getting really far out in terms of prospect talk, and I'm not. I've made it known on podcasts before that I am not a prospect reporter or anything of the sort. Prospects are not really my wheelhouse. However, I do know that the Penguins have some decent goaltenders in their farm system. Brian mentions both Blomqvist and Sergei Murashov. Murashov was drafted in 2022, I believe. That was a Ron Hextall draft pick, and it was rare. I remember it was rare when it happened because the Penguins hadn't really selected really any Russian prospect since I think Evgeny Malkin before that pick. Anyone that I can remember, at least. But here's where the issue lies. So Murashov is 19 years old. He remains unsigned. The Penguins still have his rights, but he is not signed to any sort of entry-level contract. He is flipping around back and forth between the KHL and the MHL, which is Russia's junior league. But here's why things are interesting when it comes to Murashov. In 2023-24, in 22 MHL games. Again, this is the junior league for Russian players. Murashov has a 1.98 goals against and a 930 save percentage with 4 shutouts and an 18-3-1 record. However, I'm more interested in what he's done in the senior league, the KHL, this season. He's played in 6 games, and he's earned a 925 save percentage, a 1.84 goals against, and a 3-1 record. At 19 years old, he's playing against men at 19 and putting up those kinds of statistics, backing the net there in the KHL. So while it's going to be a small sample size, we really aren't going to know what's going to happen with Murashov and a lot of these Russian prospects for maybe the next 3-4 years. The thing about the Russian prospects is take the Ukraine invasion out of it. Even if you take the invasion and the geopolitical nature of drafting Russian prospects in this day and age, it's become increasingly difficult for Russian players to get out of their contracts and come over to play on North American ice for the NHL teams that have drafted them. So the good thing for the Penguins is if by chance Sergei Murashov does get a chance to get out of a KHL contract in the future, the Penguins will retain his rights for, I believe, an indefinite period of time. I don't believe his rights expire like they do with other junior teams in Canada. So if the Penguins have to play the long game, perhaps 3, 4, 5 seasons from now until Murashov can get over here, and at that point, let's assume that he's blossomed into something something good, something worthwhile, something worth watching. I think the Penguins are going to play the best goaltender. It might end up being where Tristan Jarry goes into the Marc-Andre Fleury role at that point, and a Blomqvist or a Murashov, whoever emerges from that prospect cupboard as a real viable NHL starting caliber goalie may become the young cheap option, whereas Jarry may be pushed aside, may be traded for, as Brian mentions, team needs or something of the sort. But I find it ironic that the goalie, Ron Hextall, perhaps unknowingly leaving Pittsburgh with a parting gift, that being a potential franchise goaltender in the future, assuming if Murashov's development goes off without a hitch. Question 4, I believe, as we go back to Robbie. This question comes from Snail, of all people, who should be barred from asking questions. Robbie, who are your top 3 favorite non-Penguins players of all time?
So I'm starting with Paul Kariya. Love Paul Kariya when he played for the Ducks. Was a fantastic player. Unfortunately, his career was marred by concussions, but he had that incredible run in 2003, carrying the Ducks along with J.S. Giguère to the Stanley Cup final. Just an incredible player. Played NCAA hockey in Maine. One of my all-time favorites. Hope he is doing well, and the brain is all right. Let's put it that way. Next up, a bunch of guys kind of like threw into my head, but I have to go with the Dominator, Dominik Hasek. I got to see him play in person once, and just an absolute. You're never going to see a goalie like him again. His style it's obviously a very unorthodox style. It's a kind of what Tim Thomas lived on, a very unorthodox style for the success he had. He's not really arguably, I think that if you talk to people that really watch hockey and understand hockey, he is the greatest goaltender of all time. I think bar none. He didn't have the wins, but he never played on a team like the Devils or the Avalanche. They got him that. I remember there was a commercial back when in his prime that it said that he had a slinky for a spine, and that was absolutely true. He was just an unreal player. I'm grateful I got to see him play in person once, and I just don't think you ever see a goaltender like him again. And number 3, again, another one that I kind of bounce around on because, again, a lot of great players in NHL history to only stick with 3. And I didn't want to pick anybody that I would consider like a rival or anything like that, simply because it kind of felt like a little dirty and stuff like that. But my third and final, I'm just kind of throwing names around in my head because I don't want to like because whenever I say a name, I'll regret it. So if any of you guys have any other ideas, let me think a second. Who would be your top 3 favorite non-Penguins in history?
I don't know if I have 3 off the top of my head. The first player that came to mind that was a non-Penguin for me was Teemu Selanne. I thought, like, just watching him shoot the puck, like, what a fluid goal scorer he was. That was really before my time. I caught him at the tail end of his career in Anaheim, but watching some highlights going back and watching some highlights of Selanne with the Jets, that was really, really fascinating to watch. But other two other players, I can't really off the top of my head on the spot right now. Selanne, I was thinking about it while Robbie, you were talking. I'm thinking, I really, really enjoyed Teemu Selanne, but God, there are dozens and dozens of players that we could probably pick here that haven't played for the Penguins.
I'm actually going to say my third one is going to be Joe Sakic. All-time great. Played on some excellent teams, Hall of Famer, helped build a Stanley Cup champion in Colorado. So I'm going to say Joe Sakic, just a very fluid player, just an all-time great, and was very fun to watch. He was kind of his prime, was a part of my the years that I grew up watching hockey and really starting to understand the game. So I'm going to go with Sakic as well.
Decent list. I was really curious for Garrett's, because I'm curious, because like the further back you go, the more like physicality kind of played a role in hockey a little bit more so than now. I was frothing at the mouth to hear him say some tough guy but no. Timo Solani's a great one. He had a decent rookie year.
Yeah,
a little decent.
Yeah.
Yeah, records will never be broken. Yeah, that's it. Garrett, like, I mean, the generational gap between like us and Garrett, like Garrett doesn't remember, like, I'm sure he knows who Matthew Barnaby was, but like the prime Barnaby, like guys like that, like Garrett grew up watching more of a skill-based game rather than a kind of obscenely at times clutch and grab game. Like you go back and watch highlights from like the 90s, it was like, I don't even know how you skated half the time, but I could see Garrett being more of a skill based, because that's just kind of more what he grew up with than growing up in the 90s.
I was shocked not to hear like Patrick Kane or Jonathan Taves or
one of those wildly overrated players in the last 30 years.
I could get on board with that, Robbie. I could get on board with that take.
Kane, absolutely. Taves being on the top 100 list over Malkin is the most pro-Canadian, anti-Russian bias I think I've ever seen. It's a joke. The only reason is because he wore a C on a legendary original 6 team that broke a long cup drought. That's the only reason he's
100% right.
Yeah,
I completely agree with Robbie. I mean, if you want to get more recent players, I'll say Alex Ovechkin. I have no problem.
All-time great, yeah.
As a Penguins fan, saying he is the greatest goal scorer that will probably ever walk the face of the earth, and there will never be another one as good as him. So
I don't know. Auston Matthews might have a case for being the next like dude who could potentially even sniff around breaking that goal scoring record. How do you feel about Matthews, Garrett? He's right up your alley.
I don't have a problem with Auston Matthews. I feel bad for him because I think he's 26. He might be a year older than me, and playing in Toronto, that really does a number on your hair, as you can see in post-game interviews with Auston. That poor man is going bald faster than his goal scoring totals are going up in the stats column. It's a shame to see. But
Garrett, known skill guy, known skill admirer, and also very, very aware of players' hair.
Here's what I'll say, though, to Robbie's point. It really is fascinating because you guys are 6 or 7 years older than I am. And like in the grand scheme of things, that isn't a long period of time, but to Robbie's point, it's just long enough to where there has been such a dramatic shift in how the game was played throughout the 80s and into the 90s and early 2000s to when I really started to understand the game. Like when Fleury was drafted, Malkin was drafted, Crosby was drafted, and I really, really got a solid understanding of the foundation of the game. It really is wild to see, within that 6 to 10 year time span of how differently the game was played, to whereas, as you and Snail and Robbie were both talking about how, I kind of grew up in that, and really my formative years were spent in that skill and speed era rather than the clutch and grab of like the 90s and the early 2000s.
Yeah. I feel like it, yeah, the age gap between us isn't like that massive. I like to just make you sound like the baby, like on the podcast.
I am. Yeah. I've been called the baby. I mean, Robbie and I have been at Pennsburg for years now. And, Jim's in his Jim's probably in his mid to late 30s, I would imagine.
Yeah, and so is Mike. Yeah.
So I'm definitely on the younger side compared to some of the other guys on the staff. Even here, I mean, you guys are like I said, 6-7 years older than me. So
yeah, at least
you should change your @on Twitter to baby.
Now that @ has to be taken by.
I think it probably is
the baby.
I think it actually probably is. Yeah. Good luck.
Robbie, Garrett, I just want to list a couple guys here. What do you think about Chris Pronger? What does he mean to you?
I mean, Pronger's a great player. Again, the Philly thing kind of sticks with me, but I mean, it probably shouldn't. But I mean, he played on some great Ducks teams too. Pronger's a good option as well. I wanted it to be 3 guys that I'd at least like they played as I was growing up, not like saying like Bobby Orr or something like that. Like Orr retired well before I ever was born. But yeah, I don't know. Korea was like, again, Korea, I grew up, not to go back to the Mighty Ducks question, but like Korea wore that classic Mighty Ducks uniform. I grew up watching the Mighty Ducks movies. I was going to say Solani. It was really between that. It was between that and Solani for me. Hasek was just an otherworldly freak in goal. And again, the third one I could probably interchange with a bunch of other guys. Sakic was a big one of the big names during that time growing up as well. But I mean, I could have gone Nick Lidstrom. Lidstrom's a fantastic, an all-time great defenseman player as well. I mean, I could have gone a bunch of different ways on that. So, yeah.
Right on.
Alrighty. Question 5, and we're going to switching over to Tony Gale here. This is Snail's question. Is it too early to be comparing Jari and Nedeljkovic to Fleury and Murray? Fairly solid pairing so far. One of my concerns of the preseason, but they are holding their own.
They are holding their own, but like I don't think they're comparable in the sense that they are. There we have it's a tandem. It's not, we're not relying on one guy. But I mean, like, dude, I think people forget how good Murray was.
Yeah.
Let's just like 2016 and 17 in the regular season, Murray had 32 wins and 10 losses and 241 goals against. And then that same year where Marc-Andre Fleury was the backup, he had 18 wins and 10 losses with a 302 save percentage. So it's like they were, I mean, the team in front of them was a lot more, I would say, dialed in than the team right now. But I mean, they were like truly great. Like they were a tandem that was closer to what's going on in Boston with Swayman and Ullmark. They're a decent tandem, but they're not like, I mean, Fleury's a Hall of Famer. Murray, unfortunately, I mean, we all kind of saw what happened to his career, and it's really unfortunate because, I mean, to come into the league and in your rookie year have 2 cups under your belt, I mean, you never know. He could get it back on track. We hope. I hope for his sake. You know, you don't want it to be a flash in the pan for a guy like him, and injuries have really decimated his career. But yeah, I wouldn't compare them. I could, just by looking at your face, Robbie, and what I am. I don't know what Garrett's thinking. I can't see his face, but Robbie, you wouldn't compare it. It's not the same.
No, I mean, again, you're going from. Fleury again was an all-time legend in Pittsburgh. Like you're replacing. Not take the Hall of Fame aspect out of it. One of the most beloved athletes in Pittsburgh sports history altogether. That's encompassing all sports. Nedeljkovic, not a rookie. Matt Murray came out of nowhere. Not really nowhere. He was well known. Like there were high prospects for him coming up. But one, they got to win back-to-back cups if they want this comparison. Fleury, yeah, it's not quite the same. It's just 2 goalies playing really well. Neither, and like back in the Murray Fleury days, like Murray had basically established himself as a starter at after that first cup. That next season, he pretty much established himself as the number 1 guy, whereas neither of these guys really has. Again, I need to see it in the playoffs too. I mean, those guys were lights out in the playoffs those 2 years. So yeah, I mean, great pairing, would not put them on the same even atmosphere as what Murray and Fleury were in Pittsburgh.
Not even sniffing the same air as them. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, Tony. Question 6 coming from our good friend Edward Beckham. He asked Garrett, "What are your thoughts on the Kraken game-changing times? It suits him. It suits our pal Edward fine because it's a 6 p.m. game over in the UK across the pond."
So yeah, and Tony Gale, I believe, is across the pond over in England as well. So 2 Englishmen asking some questions here. That was honestly one of the first things I thought about because I do feel bad for Penguins fans who live in England or Australia, who, if they're watching, if they're not in North America and they want to watch these games, like in England, it's a 5-hour time difference from the East Coast. So a 7 p.m. start time on the East is what, midnight in England? So just to watch one of your favorite teams, that has to be like, that's some real dedication. That is some real dedication to want to watch those teams play at the, you know, the graveyard shift, I guess I'll call it. But yeah, the crazy snow in Buffalo basically indirectly or directly altered the Penguins' plans, because I think the Kraken were playing the very next night, and the Penguins and the NHL decided to push the game up to 1 o'clock, so the game would be over by 4. The Kraken could get out of Pittsburgh and they could go on to their next game. But yeah, that was one of the first things I thought of when the game switched times was, well, everyone overseas that likes to watch the Penguins in Finland, Sweden, England, all of those countries across the pond, yeah, they should be able to finally get a game at a decent time. I mean, well, the Penguins get 12:30 starts, 1 o'clock starts, 3 o'clock in the afternoon starts from time to time. So it's not out of the ordinary for them to play matinee games. But considering this was a 6 o'clock start time instead of a 1 p.m. Eastern start time, definitely a nice treat for our pals across the pond. Question 7, as we go back to Robbie here. Question 7 comes from Kim Larson. Before the season started, would you have thought that Winnipeg and Vancouver, this is a good question, Winnipeg and Vancouver, of all teams, would be top teams in the Western Conference?
Personally, no. I did not think that. I always thought Vancouver had talent to maybe scrape around and be feisty for a wild card spot. But Thatcher Demko is being just basically Patrick Waugh. He's probably the leader for the Vezina right now. If not, he's second behind the Winnipeg Jets goalie, Connor Hellebuck, who's been, well, we knew Hellebuck was a great goalie. He's been phenomenal for years now. Is likely going to be the face of Team USA here in the next couple international tournaments once things get going again. But no, I didn't expect either of these teams to be anywhere near not maybe fighting for a playoff spot, a bubble team maybe, but now they're suddenly the top 2 teams in the Western Conference, and that's great. Winnipeg obviously is, if you've ever watched a playoff game there, is a complete madhouse. Vancouver, a very passionate fan base, has come close a couple times, can go a little unhinged if things don't go their way, as we've seen in the past, but overall, glad to see some new blood at the top of these conferences, especially in the West, where the East kind of feels a little more chalky, but the West, having teams like Winnipeg and Vancouver in there, it's tons of fun, and I hope they can keep it up and make deep runs come springtime. Question number 8 from Edward Beckham again. This is for Snail. What are your jobs? A bit personal, I know, but hey. And yes, I'm from the UK to answer conversations on previous podcasts.
Snail works as Snail works as one of the attractions at a local gentleman's club in Seattle.
I wasn't sure where that was going, but I knew it was going somewhere.
Yeah, I wish I'd probably make a lot more money than I make right now. Our pal Edward Beckham, any relations to another Englishman that shares a last name? Any relation to David Beckham, the underwear supermodel? I think he's good at soccer, but mostly known for his underwear modeling. Yeah, for a job, I'm a painter. I paint houses. I worked as a tile setter for a while too. So I'm up on ladders, working with my hands, around all sorts of really horrendous chemicals. Yeah, I'm trying to get out of that field. Actually, I'm hoping maybe by the time that summer rolls around, I'll be happily in a new career. I've been working in the trades since 2012, so yeah, like 12 years. And
Snail's going to be one getting his knees replaced when he's 40.
Oh, dude, yeah, that's one of the reasons why I'm trying to get out of this, is because I actually have hobbies and stuff where I'm physical, and I like playing sports still and stuff, and I would love to be able to continue doing that. So anyways, yeah, mostly a painter though for the last 12 years, and hoping to not be doing that if this question ever rolls around again. Garrett and Robbie, I'll pass it off to you, and you can tell our pal from across the pond what it is you do to make your living.
I'm an IT guy, pretty much the computer guy. I don't know if they call it IT over in Britain and Europe, but so to clarify that in case that's what the deal is over there. But yeah, I work on computers. I work for an engineering firm. I'm one of the IT guys down there, and yeah, I do freelance writing for a local paper here where I live, and I am a staff writer for Pennsburg. I've been there for Garrett, how long's that been now? 8 years?
2017.
Like
you came in.
Yeah.
So
when Garrett was in.
No, I came in 2016. Yeah, I was there for the second of the back-to-back cups. So I started in fall of 2016, so 7.5-ish years. Going on 8 here later this year. So that's what I do, and that's a part of what Garrett does as well.
Yeah, I'm a freelance writer myself. I get paid part-time wages, hourly wages for a local TV news station here in Pittsburgh, KDKA TV. I am what's called a web producer, where I basically, if you watch really any sort of newscast, it could be in England too, I guess. If you watch a newscast and you see the stories on the news, I'm a person that takes that same news story and puts it on the website. So if you can't watch a newscast on TV or radio, you go to their website and you see all the news stories. I am a person that takes their broadcast scripts and I clean it up for web and internet and SEO purposes. And I write articles. I write, my own articles. I can write through press releases, but yeah, I'm a freelance writer. Like Robbie, I've been with Pennsburg for a long time. I think I came in the summer of 2016, if memory.
Yeah, we're about the same exact time.
Yeah, so a lot of writing, a lot of journalism. I went to college for a broadcast journalism degree, so I've parlayed that into basically a writing career. It's incredibly interesting, and it barely pays the bills, let me tell you.
Fair. It's not lying.
It's not lying. It's the dead honest truth.
Garrett. All right, shall we move on?
Yes.
You don't want to tell Garrett. You don't want to tell him about your other job.
Other jobs, sir?
Just kidding. We won't go there. Let's see. Question number 9 from Kim Larson. Who are the top? I'm sure this won't ruffle any feathers. Who are the top 5 most overpaid players in Pittsburgh? I know many will say Carter, but who are the other 4 or maybe 5 if Carter isn't one of them?
So Carter is absolutely overpaid. Thankfully, we won't have to talk about him anymore after this season ends. But I was looking at the contracts going into 2024-25. I mean, people on Twitter are going to say Erik Karlsson's overpaid, just because, portions of the fan base need a whipping boy, whether it's Ryan Graves or Erik Karlsson. You could make an argument for Ryan Graves. His early tenure with the Penguins has not gotten off to the best start. Here's hoping that he could maybe turn that around and become the top 4 defenseman that the Penguins want him to be. I think Brian Rust and Rickard Rakell are paid the same, and I think they're fairly paid for what they produce. Riley Smith, you'd like to see more out of Riley Smith for a $5 million cap hit, but I believe his contract expires at the end of this season, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think there are 5 bad contracts on this team. The thing that Kyle Dubas did masterfully was getting rid of Mikael Granlund and who else did he get rid of? Jan Ruda. He got rid of a lot of bad contracts over the summer to bring in Erik Karlsson. So every time someone goes to poop on Erik Karlsson or his play, I always go back and think, yeah, but the things that Dubas did to orchestrate that move and get Karlsson here, getting Granlund's contract off the books, Jan Ruda's contract off the books. I mean, thank you. I will build your statue right now for getting those terrible contracts out of Pittsburgh. But I really, I mean, unless you guys have something else to say regarding this, I don't think there are 5 bad contracts on this roster right now.
I have a couple things I want to add. Well, I think Carlson is not overpaid because it's an embarrassment of riches, like we've said on the back end. You're asking a number one puck moving defenseman to share time now with Letang. So I don't think that he's necessarily overpaid. And like you said, if you look at without that trade, you have more than 5 bad contracts on this team. And then the other thing is, like, is there any argument? Because I believe this, but I'm curious if you guys would agree that Jari's overpaid.
If Jari keeps playing at the level he is, he's actually probably underpaid for a goaltender.
Jari's 12-12 on the year. I know he's got the shutouts. He's been pulled a fair amount. He's getting paid $5,375,000 for quite.
I mean, if he keeps playing like he is the last couple of weeks, those numbers will improve, and I think he'd be underpaid as a goaltender. Some of the goaltender numbers are just absolutely absurd.
This podcast is brought to you by AT&T Fiber with All-Fi. Something tells me that the guy watching sports for 13 hours straight on Sunday, who then stays up watching the recaps of those 13 hours, then calls his friends to talk about it, is definitely going to notice that half-a-second delay.
Get AT&T Fiber with All-Fi and watch sports any time of day from anywhere in your house. Live like a gigillionaire. Limited availability in select areas. Go to att.com/hypergig to check eligibility. Coverage may require extenders at additional charge.
You can claim victory in sports, on the job site, even on your taxes by switching to H&R Block. Block offers many ways to file to fit your schedule. A 100% accurate return and your max refund or your money back. Plus, you'll always know the price of your tax prep before you begin. Switch today and feel like a tax champion. This tax season, it's better with Block. Make an appointment at hnrblock.com. All tax situations are different. Not everyone gets a refund. Limitations apply. Description of benefits and details at hnrblock.com/guarantees.
To me, I can see how portions of, especially over the summer, when that contract was announced, when Jari's contract was announced, people, their heads caught on fire because they thought it was an overpayment at the time. As the cap continues to go up, I think it's going to look more and more like a bargain. Yeah, I'm not here to defend Jari because he absolutely has mental lapses from time to time. But to Robbie's point, the last couple of weeks, this goalie tandem, Ned and Jari, has been playing lights out and keeping the Penguins in games that they may or may not deserve to win half the time. So, yeah, you're definitely going to take the good with the bad. There is quite a bit of inconsistency, and there has been in Jari's game really throughout his professional career. But I think if you look at it more often than not, the good is going to outweigh the bad. Alrighty. With that, we will move on to question 10 from Kim Larson. We'll go back to Robbie here. Robbie, Jaromir Jagr's jersey retirement is fast approaching. Do you think Lemieux will make a return to PPG Paints Arena and attend the ceremonies when Jaromir Jagr's number is retired?
Would be utterly shocked if he does not show up. This has been something that he has pushed for years. Obviously, there was a lot of hoops to jump through. Maybe some fences to still mend, but Mario has been not shy about making sure Jagr is properly honored in the city of Pittsburgh. And unless there's some kind of illness or something that would prevent him, I would be utterly stunned if he is not here, along with a lot of other big names in Penguins history that I'm sure are going to be on the docket to make an appearance at this. I could see a lot of guys from that era of Penguins hockey showing up for this, maybe some surprises, maybe some expected. But I'd be okay with etching a nameplate for his seat wherever he's going to sit that night. I see no way that he's not in the arena for this. Question 11, again from Kim here. What coach or coaches are next in line to be sacked or fired? Could you see Toronto firing their coach?
No, I don't see Toronto firing their coach. I mean, I don't really necessarily think that a lot of their woes are his fault. I mean, they have like 60% of their cap tied up in a few whiny stars who aren't very detail oriented in their games. He's only working with so much depth to kind of shore up their defense is not good. They have one good defenseman. Also, Toronto doesn't seem to like they had opportunities to move off of some of that core, like their big whatever, their Matthews, Nylander, Marner, and then they signed like Tavares. Like they've had opportunities to move off from them, and they don't. I think that Shanahan and MLSE are quite patient. They're making money hand over fist anyways. I don't think they're in any rush to make a ton of moves, so I don't see them sacking Sheldon Keefe. As far as who's next in line to be fired, there were at times this year I was thinking maybe Sullivan would be the guy to get sacked, but I don't believe that's the case anymore. We've seen a fair amount of firings, like have we not this year? Like we already forget Jay Woodcroft was let go early in the season for the Edmonton Oilers' historic skid. They've gotten it back on the rails under Chris Knobloch. Trying to think of who else. Oh yeah, who's the Babcock got fired before the season even started. So that Pascal Vincent in Columbus, I wonder if maybe he would be the next guy to like be quote unquote fired or let go, because I just don't know if like Columbus stinks again. You just never really know if is this to the direction that they really want to go as far as like with a coach. I could see him maybe being let go.
Yeah, that's the name that came to mind right away was Pascal Vincent. I think that will be a postseason firing, just because he's going to caretake them through the rest of the season. Another name I could see, I don't know if it'll happen, but up there in the Pacific Northwest, Dave Haxtell. That team's kind of flatlined after last year. So yeah, those are two that kind of stick out to me more than anything.
I'd like to see that Dan Bylsma get back into the league.
Is he still in Coachella?
Yeah.
Is he? Okay.
They're a good team. They went to the Calder Cup last year. So
yeah, I knew that. I didn't know if he went anywhere, maybe an assistant job somewhere, but yeah, he might get another shot.
Pittsburgh West, baby.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on here to question number 12 from Kim Larson. Sorry I didn't hear your request for my hot dog topping. I like ketchup, Dijon, and French mustard. I don't know what that is. Remoulade, Danish relish, roasted and raw onions, soy sauce, and pickles. I also like a simple hot dog. I also like a simple hot dog just with French dressing. Maybe it's also a Danish thing. So I have no idea what some of this stuff is.
I've heard of remoulade. I haven't used it on anything, but I've definitely heard of it. But like, let's continue the hot dog discussion from last week. Robbie, I don't think you were here for that one last week. Were you here for both episodes last week?
He was.
No, I missed one last week.
That's what I thought. Yeah, that was the one. Snail, that was the one that you and I did. I think it was last Monday, I think. Anyway, we got on a conversation talking about hot dog toppings, and I know I think Brian recently brought up the mustard discussion. What did Kim say? Ketchup. I like ketchup on my hot dogs. I like Dijon and French mustard as well. I love raw onions on burgers, hot dogs. I could eat raw onions just by themselves. French dressing. What is?
I don't know if that means like French dressing, like we think of French dressing.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Because that, like, I like French dressing to a point. I can deal with it in spurts, but as a hot dog topping, I don't know. But if this is a different type of French dressing, then I can't properly answer this question.
The hot dog
says that French dressing is made of oil, vinegar, sugar, and other flavorings.
Okay, but that's like our French dressing as in salad dressing. What French dressing over there could mean something completely different. So, Kim, you'll have to, if you listen to this before Sunday, hit us up with your explanation of what French dressing is. Because if it's the same, don't know if I could put it on a hot dog, but I'll let Kim answer that.
Alrighty. Let's move on and wait for Kim's response for next week's episode. Question 13, staying with Kim Larson here. Robbie, can Commissioner Gary Bettman and the NHL block a trade if need be?
I think so. I don't see why not. I mean, it would be in more of a cap circumvention type of way. They wouldn't just step in and be like, oh, we don't want this guy going to Toronto or Washington or Seattle or something like that. Not like that way. I know the NFL, the NBA has blocked a trade in probably about 10 years ago at this point. They blocked a Chris Paul trade because of money issues and it's just some shady stuff that was going on behind the scenes. So if teams would kind of show up and do a cap circumvention type thing, they could stand in and block a trade. They did that with, it wasn't a trade, but they blocked the Ilya Kovalchuk contract back in 2010 or 2011, whatever it was, because of how lopsided it was in terms of front loading and stuff like that. So yeah, they have levers to pull, but it would be a very rare and circumstance to see something like that happen. 14, Kim again. Do you think Toronto has overpaid William Nylander to get the deal over the line, or is it a good deal for both parties?
Yeah, they overpaid Nylander. I would have.
You think so? You think they overpaid Nylander?
This is a consensus, right? Like everyone believes this.
I think, honestly, I think he is. Yeah, I think he's going to be fairly paid for his production.
Oh my God!
We center everything through the lens of Crosby and Malkin, who are drastically underpaid. So just keep that in mind when these topics come up. We Penguins fans tend to center everything around what the pay cut Crosby's taking all these years. That seeing a guy actually earn his worth or get his worth might seem like an overpay.
Dude, yeah. I mean, I get that. I can understand that for sure. I can sympathize with that. But, like, I don't look at Sid and G. Like, dude, no one does what Sid does and, like, taking less. Like, it was him and then Boston, Bergeron, and those guys, they do that. But I was looking at comparables. Like, dude, this guy, he's, like, his demeanor on the ice drives me nuts. He's so disengaged at times. He doesn't like the physicality. He's a right winger. I get that Pastrnak is kind of his comparable right now. Pastrnak is way more consistent, and that he's not David Pastrnak. He's not Elias Pettersson, who's going to get paid this offseason as well. Pettersson's a center. He's on the first line. I don't think he's an $11.5 million player. I could see, and I get it. Like, everyone loves to factor in like taxes and all that stuff. I think from what I understand that he'll be making roughly like $9.5 million or something like that. And he's going to be essentially like netting $9 million off of this contract. That is what I would agree with that every day of the week. Like, he's a $9 million player. I just think putting the $11 million tag on him like, I just don't like it, that wouldn't fly if I was GM at all. Even with the future increases in salary cap, the cap's going to go up exponentially. I would imagine it's going to take exponential jumps over the next 3 to 5 seasons. Like, even with the salary cap rising, you would still poo-poo that contract? No, I wouldn't. No, in 5 years, I wouldn't want him making 11. I
really
wouldn't want him making over 11 million. No,
You think his play is going to fall off that drastically?
It already is. They're already rioting in Toronto because he inked the contract and he's become a ghost. He's not playing with the same tenacity that he was at the beginning of the year. They're already up in arms about it, and I knew that would happen because that's just cut from the same cloth as his dad, Michael Nylander. I get it; it's a business. I understand. I want players to get paid too. Like, if I were in the NHL and I was soft and not a leader and lazy at times, if I could get $11.5 million, I would do everything I could to get that money. But like, no, I think he's overpaid.
So a player who scored 34 goals and 80 points in 21-22, a 40 goal scorer last year in 82 games with 87 points, and right now he's already over 20 goals, 36 points, 57. He has 57 points in 42 games this year. Like, how could Toronto? Like, what are Toronto fans expecting? Like, are they expecting 150 point performances out of Nylander with this contract? I mean, come on now.
I mean, probably expecting better play than what he's been doing in the last 12 games or 10 games.
I mean, granted, I'm just looking at box score stats right here, goals and assists. I don't watch the Maple Leafs religiously, but I just don't understand how you look at his production over the last 3 seasons and you think he's not worth a double digit contract in today's NHL.
Garrett, I remember a time when a right winger who scored 30 or 40 a year and got 60 to 80 points cost you $8.5 million. $8 million.
I mean, times change and the cap increases. That's exactly what's happening.
The cap has been in the gutter for so long, and it's starting to trickle up. It's not like jumping up. And what about filling out the rest of your roster? Like, if we're putting if we're in the shoes of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Austin's making $13 million. Marner's almost $11 million. Tavares like $11 million or whatever, and now Neil, dude, you have one solid defenseman making practically shekels compared to these guys. How are you supposed to fill out a competent roster? You've got all your money in 2 lines, and look at their goaltending. Like, they probably wish they had 2 nickels to rub together right now to pay for a goaltender, and they're giving $11.5 million to William Nylander.
I mean, John Tavares' contract is going to come off the books after next season? That's $11 million cap. So right there, you have at least $11 million if you don't want to re-sign John Tavares, or you bring him back at a discounted rate compared to when he signed that contract in his prime. I mean, Robbie, you've been silent here. I think you have to be the mediator here. What are your thoughts to before Snail and I start throwing fists at one another?
I mean, Toronto, can you let him walk for nothing? I mean, again, we're talking about, when you talk about Toronto fans not being happy, but you're dealing with maybe the most unhinged group of sporting individuals in North America. I mean, they believe that the world revolves around them, that their shit don't stink, stuff like that. You actually have Marner's and Tavares' money coming off the books next year. Not saying
Marner's going to want less?
No, I mean, Marner will. I mean, he's not going to want less than the 10.9 he's getting right now. Let's put it that way. I mean, I don't know what you do. I mean, Morgan Riley's on the books for a long time. Now, you do have TJ Brody coming off after this year. That's $5 million. That's really the only UFA defenseman they have. Obviously, the goaltending situation is, a thing. For some reason, they signed Ryan Reeves to a 3-year contract. That's definitely a decision. Whatever your thoughts on Reeves is, that's still at this point in his career, a very interesting.
Wasn't he like 36 when he signed it too?
It's a 35+ deal, so he's at least 35. Now they do have some salary relief from like Muzzin and Klingberg and stuff. Not Klingberg, that money all comes off the book next year and stuff. But I mean, you have Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, you have Austin Matthews and William Nylander under contract for a very long time. Now, Max Domi and Tyler Bertuzzi come off the books. That's $8 million there. But again, you need guys like that on your team, and I doubt that Tyler Bertuzzi is going to come cheap again next year. And Max Domi, who knows what that situation is. But, I mean, if you want to keep your talent, not everybody is going to be like Pittsburgh and take the hometown discount. And he's making almost $7 million this year, so he'll add only $4.5 million on to the cap next year with what he's making. But, I mean, if you want to keep the talent, you're going to have to pay up. And Toronto, they know that Toronto is a destination. Toronto's going to be willing to spend to the max, and that's how it's going to be. Their fans, I don't really take too much into what their fans say because, like I said, they're the most unhinged group of individuals in North America.
I'll say that's why Nylander deserves all that money, because he has to put up with not only the fan base but the local media, who, if getting their way, they're going to craft narratives that are going to force a lot of those players out of Toronto to begin with.
But he's absolutely going to reset.
He's never going to pay for a meal and get in his life in Toronto.
Well, he doesn't have to worry about paying for much based on how much money he's getting.
What about like Mikko Rantanen? Like Mikko Rantanen, like McKinnon makes dumb money. He's deserved money, very much deserved money. Mikko Rantanen signed for $9.25.
Here's what I will say: McDavid's making 12.5. Leon Draisaitl's making 8.5. If I had a choice, I would give 11.5 to Leon Draisaitl and 8.5 to William Nylander.
I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah, Leon Draisaitl severely. I mean, that one. Who was that donkey GM in Edmonton? What was his name?
Ken Holland.
No, he's the one before him.
Oh, Peter Chiarelli.
Chiarelli gave him that contract, and out of all the horrible contracts he gave out, what a steal Leon Draisaitl is on that one. Dude, yeah, just Garrett, look at comparables around the league, and yes, the cap is slowly just creeping up ever so slightly. But I mean, would you rather have Mikko Rantanen for 9.25 or Willie Styles, as they call him, for 11.5 or whatever it was? I'd take Mikko every day of the week.
I'd rather pay $24.5 million for the combo of Draisaitl and McDavid than the combo of Matthews and Nylander.
Yeah, Leon's awesome. That's like,
I mean, he's an MVP. Like he literally has won an MVP
one
award. Like he's won an MVP award. Like that's not like a joke. Like he has the track record, of being a great player.
I did not think this conversation would get as heated as it did, but we have a couple more questions left. So, Snail, I think question 15 is for me.
Okay. Yep. Let's see here. From Kim Larson. If Russia keeps on invading and terrorizing Ukraine for years to come, will that impact the drafts of Russian players in the future?
Yeah, it very well could. Going back to the Sergei Murashov talk that we had earlier regarding Russian prospects, I don't know if this war is going to go on for years and years. I've already read some things, however reputable and accurate they are, about potential ceasefires and the withdrawing of troops, and both countries coming to the table and just stopping the fighting. So I don't know. I'm not a social scientist. I'm not a geopolitical expert in any way, shape, or form. But I mean, for as long as Ukraine and Russia keep battling one another, Russian NHL prospects are going to be left off the international stage. You're really not going to get a solid look at them during KHL action. That's what a lot of the things regarding Michkov and Murashov, however many else Russian prospects there are, their inability to play at the international level because of these bans is really, no, I don't want to say hampering their development, but it's certainly hindering what the fan can view of this prospect's play, and making a determination for the fan in saying, okay, this Russian player dominated at World Juniors. Well, you couldn't see any Russian players at the World Juniors or the Olympics or whatever have you, whatever tournaments they play. So it's definitely a hindrance to not see these Russian prospects on the international level. But again, going back to the geopolitical nature of the war, I don't know how long it's going to rage on, but I think NHL teams over the last couple of years have definitely been less inclined to take Russian players because they just don't know what the future will hold for that country and the development of those hockey players. Question 16, the final question. Well, we're still talking about William Nylander here. Question 16, Robbie, comes from Kim Larson, if Nylander can get $11.5 million a year, what do you think Jake Guentzel will ask for in the offseason, and what do you think Jake Guentzel is worth?
So I think, again, Kyle Dubas said they're going to meet with Guentzel and his representatives after the All-Star break. I think Guentzel's going to start at 9, especially with the kind of market resetting done by William Nylander. I think Guentzel's going to start at 9. The Penguins aren't going to pay 9. If he's coming back to Pittsburgh, I see that deal being $775, $8 million over the course of. Now maybe they give him 5 years instead of 4 years to spread out that cap hit a little bit, or even 6 years. Because again, the ending years of these contracts don't mean anything. People need to just put that out of there. This doesn't. These things don't mean anything whatsoever in terms of how they get the contracts done, because the Penguins, the whole side of the business is we're going to be bad in that time. We can trade, we can do whatever. None of that's going to matter. So don't freak out when you see maybe a 6-year deal for Guentzel for around. If they can spread it out to 6 years for 7.5, I'd be happy. Or 5 years at 8 is where I'd be completely happy. I think he's going to obviously. A good negotiator, a good agent would come in with a high number, even if he comes in with 10. I think everybody knows, Dubas and Guentzel's camp know that number's not happening in Pittsburgh whatsoever. The market, he could probably easily get 9.5, 10. I don't doubt that one bit. This is a guy that scored 40 goals multiple times. Those guys don't grow on trees. The Penguins, I do believe, at the end of the day, do re-sign him somewhere in the ballpark of 5 to 6 years. For somewhere between $40 and $42 million.
Robbie, let's chat about this a little bit more here. So would you let Guentzel walk if he wanted $9 million? Because I think Jake is deserving of $9 million. I think that if that's what he wants, I think Dubas should sign the check and seal it with a kiss.
Man. $9 million's a lot.
You guys, William Nylander gets 11.5, and Garrett's like, well, the cap's going up.
It is going to keep going up. If they're serious about competing for Stanley Cups the rest of Crosby's career, Jake Guentzel is a very important part of that. Unless you can find a guy for a lower price with the same production or close to the same production on the market, I think you have to strongly consider doing that while maybe trying to negotiate it down a little bit. But if worse comes to worse and it's $9 million a sticking point, let's call it, if the Penguins are stuck on 8, let's call it 8.5 and put ink to paper.
Put ink to paper and another Jake Shake deal. How much would Garrett? How much would Toronto give Jake Guentzel this year?
They don't have anything left to give anybody, so
that is true. I mean, if you like, can you comparably swap Nylander and Jake Guentzel production?
Jake Guentzel's way better. I got his numbers right here. I mean, since 2016-17. He's good for like 16 goals, 22 goals, 40, 20, 23, 40, 36, 19. Is
Guentzel a point per game player over his career?
Let's see. Game played,
probably
495 points, 460. So just a little shot.
A little under.
And Nylander is 480.
What he does do is he performs in the playoffs, unlike the majority of that Leafs roster.
Well, that's a conversation that I can agree with, because the Leafs are famously notorious outside of last season for getting eliminated in the first round.
58 games played in the playoffs, 58 points in the playoffs for Jake Guentzel. Toronto would give him $19 million.
19
Not
million.
a penny less.
They just give him a $10 million raise on top of the $9 million we were already discussing.
I love firing shots at Toronto.
William Nylander for MVP. Who says no?
For MVP?
Yes, just to piss you off.
I'm gonna come through this camera right now and fall over the top turnbuckle.
He doesn't have his on, so you can't come after him.
I'm like John Cena. You can't see me. You can't see what I'm doing right now. That's right. So I will continue the crusade for William Nylander's MVP push throughout the remainder of the season, just to spite Snail at this point.
With Sid in the race himself, it's just a Pennsburg article comes out.
Screw that old geezer Sidney Crosby. The leave him in the past. The time is now. This is William Nylander's league, and anything else that is detractable from William Nylander, it just doesn't matter.
You know, there's probably some crony nerd out there with an analytical just hard on that would make some sort of point that some stat proves that William Nylander's better than Sidney Crosby.
There's probably is some stat out there, but I have seen some.
It's you.
Oh, I am I do like analytics. I think analytics have their place in hockey. I have been looking at some stat cards, some underlying stat cards for Sidney Crosby. I think Jay Fresh, he's a really solid follow in Penguin circles for analytics on Twitter. I recently saw one of his Sidney Crosby player cards, and Crosby at age 36 is just a freak of nature. Like the aging curve, just when you think the aging curve is going to start coming for him, it just doesn't. I mean, I think it'll come eventually, but not this year.
You know who else was a freak of nature, Garrett? You should look up his highlights. Is Chris Pronger.
Chris Pronger, former Philadelphia. Wasn't he on? Did he play for the St. Louis Blues?
Yes.
Yeah,
that's what I thought.
The Hartford Whalers and the Anaheim Ducks won a gold medal, won a cup. Not a big deal. You should watch his. There's an awesome YouTube compilation I've been watching for so long, and it's still up on YouTube. And it's him edited to I think it's like 3 Days Grace, like a highlight package of him. It's so sick. It's so sick. It gets me fired up every time I watch it.
God, that's straight out of like 2009, huh?
Oh,
3 Days Grace.
That, probably.
Probably right. Yeah. Well, fellas, we got through 2 extra large mailbags this week. Does anyone have anything else to say, or forever hold your peace? Robbie? Nope. Snail? Nope. Go William Nylander for MVP. For Snail.
Don't say that shit on here.
For Snail. For Robbie, I have been Garrett Bahana. Thank you so much for listening to this edition of the Skating Penguin Network, and we will talk to all of you again very soon.